Welcome to Home Education Matters, the weekly podcast supporting you on your home education journey. Hello and welcome to another episode of Home Education Matters, and today is our final episode in the Schools Out mini-series that we've been doing this summer. And the point of this series was to shine a light on some of the challenging and negative school experiences that are inherent within the system. And I think neither of my children have been to school, and I think I really realized for the first time when I did the podcast with Naomi Fisher about a year ago. It was about supporting your anxious child, and she said there very clearly that the inherent system within a school builds anxiety in. It almost encourages children to be anxious because an anxious child is slightly easier to handle, I suppose. And I thought that was such an interesting concept. And I think in the home education community, we do shy away a little bit from criticizing school, partly because I think we don't want to be seen as belligerent, and partly I think it almost makes us feel that maybe it undermines our choice if it feels like it's not a choice, like it was forced upon us. I'm not quite sure. Maybe we just don't want to alienate a whole group of people in society. But I wanted, with this mini-series, I suppose I wanted to shine that light on some of these stories and to showcase them as part of our community. Because I think if we as a home education community, so outside of the education system, aren't shining a light on these things, aren't allowing these children's stories to be told, I don't know where they're going to be told, because I don't think a lot of other communities want these stories to be told. I suppose I felt as this podcast was coming to its natural end that I wanted to make sure we covered this. And so I've been really, really proud of this little mini series. We had the first one, which was a personal perspective with Helen about her experience of the school system and her daughter's experience of the school system. And then I did an episode with Dr. Koslowitz on trauma and how to handle trauma within the family. And then last week we did the episode with Martine, which was all about her child's deeply traumatic experience with school. And to finish off the series, I have Vicky with me today, and Vicky is going to be talking about her daughter's experience at school. So firstly, Vicky, thank you so much for joining me to have a conversation about something that is inherently very difficult, and I really appreciate you coming on the podcast today. So Vicky, do you want to tell us a little bit about your journey and your daughter's journey?
Okay, it was probably easier to start right at the beginning, just for context. So my eldest daughter is she's 14, she's almost 15 in November. And before she started school, I just had a gut instinct that it wasn't right. I wanted to home educate, but I'm what I would call a reluctant home educator. I wanted to, but there was so many fears and like, can I do it? Do it? I just wasn't sure what to do. I wasn't too bothered about them going to primary school, but I knew I didn't want them to go to secondary school. Anyway, I ended up making the decision to send her to school purely because, almost selfish reasons. It sounds awful to say that, but at the time I had chronic insomnia because my second daughter literally didn't sleep for more than 30 minutes at a time. And there's only 2.5 years between them. So I kind of made the decision because I thought, I need this for my mental health, and for me to be a better parent, I need this little bit of respite. And so she went to school, and the first week she loved it, ran in every day. By the end of the week, she said, well, I've got to go again. And I said, yeah, you've got to go every time, darling. You've got to go 5 days a week. And then there was tears every day for 2 years. And any parent who's took a child to school and had them prized out of their arms will know the physical and mental and emotional pain that I went through every day. It was torture. When our little sister joined school, that stopped. Everything was fine. They settled in. So I thought, oh, well, maybe this school thing isn't too bad. We weren't having any issues. When there was issues, I'm the kind of person to speak up. So I would go and happily have a conversation with the teacher. Everything seemed to be okay. And then what happened was when she started year 5, they had split the year groups. So there'd been 2 year 5 groups, and they'd all been from reception all the way through together. But due to some for want of a better word, what the teachers called them, due to some naughty kids. They wanted to kind of separate the groups and try and separate some of these boys that were misbehaving and get them apart. But it had a huge impact on all the children. As you can imagine, at 10, it's very much an age where they're just getting that identity, and they kind of, it's a huge hormonal shift. There's so much going on for them. And then all of a sudden, they had all these new dynamics to sort through at school as well. On top of the extra pressure in year 5, the curriculum changes, there's all sorts of different things. Anyway, she began to get bullied off a particular boy. And I straight away tried to nip it in the bud, went to see her teacher. She says, oh, look, it is difficult at the moment because we've just gone through this transition. Give her till Christmas. So I trusted this teacher, and I said, right, okay, we'll see how things go at Christmas. Christmas came and went. She went back in and nothing was better. So again, I went to the teacher and I said, I'm not having this. This needs to be addressed. This is not okay. Her mental health was starting to deteriorate. I could see she wasn't herself. She's very confident in who she is, and that started to dim, and I was like, this is not okay. Then lockdown came. March 2020, school shut down, and I was like, thank you. And I know everybody had a different experience of lockdown, but for me, it was the best time. It was amazing because the kids were out of school. So we just loved it. And I didn't do the homeschool that the schools did. They sent homework, like every parent got the kids' stuff. And I said, we're not doing that. We are going through a global pandemic. People are anxious, stressed. We don't know what's going on. I'm not worried about them having 6 months out of school. So as we started to get back to kind of them going back in September, she started to get anxious. And 4 weeks in, well, it's probably not even that, actually, I took them out 4 weeks into the new term. So 2 weeks into the new term, I just saw my little girl plummet. And what happened on one occasion, someone had added her to a WhatsApp group chat. And this particular boy who had been the culprit, I will not say the words he'd said on this podcast, but some of the things he said, it made my heart ache because I thought that little boy's had them things said to him. But then he left her a voice note in this group, and he said, and kill yourself, please. And I can feel the emotion resurfacing at me after all these years. This was like 4 years ago. I just could not believe that a 10-year-old would know these things, and say these things. It was absolutely unbelievable. So I had a big decision to make. I knew that I could choose her or our education. And so obviously she'd just started year 6 at this point. So she was in year 6. They would have then been applying for going to secondary school. And I said, right, I'm going to have 2 weeks to give myself 2 weeks to really process this. Because I just had a little boy then as well. So my little boy was just turned 1. So I thought, if I take the girls out of school, I have a 1-year-old, I have a business to run, how am I going to juggle all of this? And I knew in my heart what I needed to do, but I needed also to give myself that time. But it also felt a bit like divine timing because I didn't want to send it to secondary school. But I also it's very hard just to take them out because it's such a big decision. But ultimately, I chose her, and I thought, there is nothing that I'm an avid learner. Like, you wouldn't have been able to home educate me. I wanted to be at school. I loved school, but it was totally different back then, and there was like 55 kids in my entire primary school. But there's nothing I can't learn in a book or on a website or on a course that I cannot teach my children. But if she doesn't grow up with the self-belief and the correct mental health, I knew that then I would be essentially failing her. So I took them out, and it was the best decision I ever made. I gave my other daughter, who's a couple of years younger, I gave her the choice. I said, would you like to come out of school? I'm taking your sister out. It's up to you. It's your decision. And I actually thought she might say no, because I thought she was happy. She never complained. And she said, oh, yes, please. And she was so relieved. And
Really?
yeah, yeah. And there was a little, we'll get into it at some point, but yeah, 6 months down the line, I realised just how anxious, and I had no clue how anxious she was in school every day. But she never spoke up because she's the proverbial good girl. She has always been like so well behaved, and kind of, if you ask her to help, she's so helpful. So she just had never ever voiced how she really felt, and that stung.
So your eldest daughter, she came to you and was showing you the voice notes and explaining what was happening, but perhaps your younger daughter was keeping it in a little bit more.
Yeah, there was no bullying involved with my younger daughter, because there was still, I think bullying gets worse the older the children get. And she had a lovely group of friends. She seemed to be like performing where she should in class. So yeah, there was no issues. Also, I thought.
What was the impact on the family over those years when your daughter was struggling with school?
Oh, it was horrendous. While she was still in the school, there was probably about 6 months of it because of lockdown. So we only really had maybe 6 months within the school. But God, how do you even put it into words? To see the child that you love with all your heart go from this bright, confident, she's exceptionally capable young girl to, God, she was just a shell of her former self. It was like a light had gone out. She was just withdrawn, anxious. She suddenly started to doubt herself in all areas. She started to talk about her looks, her body. And in fact, when I took her to the doctors, she was diagnosed with anorexia. And it had been about a month, and she'd said she wanted to be vegetarian. So I'd noticed she'd lost weight a little bit, and I'd noticed she wasn't eating as much. But I thought it was because she was a vegetarian, because I was vegetarian for a long time, and when I first went vegetarian, I lost a lot of weight. So I didn't really think about it, but thankfully we did nip it in the bud very, very, very fast. So that didn't become an issue, but I know for other families, sadly, that does. So we were okay with that. But her mental health side took an enormous impact. I think probably, obviously on her the most, but on me, because I am empathetic and because I gave 100% of myself to my children, I absorbed so much of it. And I remember for months on end just getting into bed every night and crying, because I was terrified that I might not get her back, that this was going to impact her so negatively for the rest of our life. Because as a profession, I'm a coach, so I know all about limiting beliefs and how our early years and our childhood impact us, and how they can hold us back, and how we can sabotage ourselves. So all of this was like going through my mind, and I was thinking, this is it. She's going to be screwed for the rest of her life. And it was terrifying, absolutely terrifying. And sorry, go on.
I was going to say there must have been a sense of helplessness as well, where you were sort of forced to watch it play out, to hope that it would get better of its own accord without you having to intervene, and that delicate balance between wanting to give it enough time to settle and to sort itself out, but not wanting to give it so much time that it caused this sort of permanent damage that you were worried about. It must have been a very anxious time for you as a parent as well.
Yeah, it really was. And that's why I wanted to do the podcast, because I know there will be some parents listening who are there now, and they'll be wondering, oh my God, are they ever going to get out of this? Are they going to be damaged forever? What can I do? And the honest answer, what I would say that they need, and what I did, was just empathy. She just needed to voice. And sometimes she would just sit for hours and tell me all these things. And she was actually suicidal. She had suicidal thoughts to the point where she'd even told me what she had thought, like where she would go to do it. So for a parent to hear their 10-year-old child talk like that, I, yeah, it's just absolutely horrific. But I just allowed her to do that. I just allowed her to voice how she was feeling, and I told her she could always come. And sometimes it got to a point where I wanted to say, stop, stop, stop. I can't take anymore. Please stop. Because it was so painful for me to absorb all of that and listen and then have the responsibility to fix it. It was just so painful. But actually now that we're 4 years down the line, she says, she's said a few times, Mum, and we have the most amazing relationship, because she can and will and does come to me with absolutely everything. And she tells me that what helped her through that, because she did go to CAMS for a little while as well, but she didn't, she enjoyed our sessions, but she didn't find them as enormously helpful as we would have liked. But she said what got her through was just being able to talk and for me to understand and just to listen and to be there. And I think that's what they need, is to be able to be seen and heard, and to know that what they're feeling is real. Because I hear so many people dismiss things like, oh, it's tit for tat, or kids being kids, oh, it happens. And I've had a few people, I've always had a really good response to being home educating. I know a lot of people get negative responses, but thankfully I've never really had that. But I did have an issue with one auntie who, when I talked about, just briefly why I took her out, and she went, oh, well, that's just what happens, isn't it? They've got to learn just to toughen up and get on with it. And I thought, wow,
It's a
sorry.
generational thing as well, isn't it? A
It
lot of
is
that.
100%, yeah. But I thought, no, this is not toughening her up. This is breaking her down. But now she is better because of it. She is stronger because of it. And it might sound a bit much to say a blessing in disguise, but in some ways it was, because it got her out of the school system, which was always in the back of my mind, so it gave us an exit route. But also, she is a stronger person because of it, and she does have a bag full of tools to use now. So she is left with anxiety, but I think she probably always would have been a little bit anxious anyway. I think that's part of our nature. But now we have processes we go through, and we talk about everything, and I know there is nothing that will ever happen in her life that she won't come and put on my plate and share. So I take the blessings out of the issue. And I think anybody listening who's going through this, my best advice would be just listen. And then they need someone that they can vent to as well. I just had one friend that I went to. Actually, the hard bit is, and I'm going to share this because this could happen to people listening. The real sad truth was, family didn't really want to know. People wanted to dismiss it, and they couldn't cope with the pain, or they couldn't cope with hearing about it. So even though I actually had asked for help from close family members, I didn't actually get any. So I just picked my best friend, and just when I needed to, I would just share with her. And that's what I needed, was just a safe place for me to be able to get the empathy that I needed, because we can't keep giving empathy if we're not getting it, and we need to be kind to ourselves. And in the beginning, I did find that hard, because I was worried, I was terrified, is a better word, that this was going to have such a negative impact. But when you learn a bit about anxiety, so we did a parental anxiety course with CAMS, and I found that really helpful, because one thing that I was tending to do was maybe be there too much. So for example, when we first went to the meeting at CAMS, I said, if you don't want to go in, darling, I'll ask them if I can sit at the back of the room. And then I learned that actually, to get through the anxiety, we need to let them do the things. So I said to her, I'm going to sit in the car. So she knew I was still there, but that, so that's something that has really helped us, with helping her through the anxiety. And when she gets anxious now, she has these tools to deal with it.
And so what you needed as the parent who'd sort of witnessed the trauma and held that space for your daughter was exactly what your daughter needed. It was that space to express yourself and to be validated and to have your emotions held for you. And that was the service that you provided for your daughter, and your best friend then did that for you.
yeah, yeah. And
That
I've said
that
for a long time that I believe empathy can change the world, and that just that one example is you know is proof that's what we need, is that connection and to be seen and heard. Because for so many people, they just push their emotions down. And for a long time, especially like you said before, like older generations, there is still, even if they don't want to admit it, there is still a lot of the belief that children should be seen and not heard. And because a lot of people have repressed their emotions, when a child comes with their big emotions, they can really struggle to listen, because it stirs up what's trapped within them. Whereas I've always expressed my emotions and felt my emotions. So yes, it's hard when the child is breaking in front of you, but I was able to just listen and, echo back what she needed to hear.
when that period of time when you were emotionally literate enough to be able to do that for your daughter, was that after you pulled her out of school that you started that healing process?
Yes. Yeah. For me, I would say it was about 4 years ago, so it's hard to kind of remember exactly when, but I would say the first 6 months were 6 to 12 months were by far the hardest. And I did reach a point of burnout, emotional burnout, where I personally was numb, and I couldn't feel any emotions, because I had given so much, and because it had been so unbelievably stressful. And on top of that, I had a baby, and he was still waking through the night, and so there was so much. Life still goes on with all the other things that go on. So yeah, the healing journey for me started once she started to get better. Then I was able to kind of heal myself as well. Say she got better, I mean, she got better, and her creativity has just flourished since taking her out of school. And yeah, she is literally shining. And whenever we go places and people talk to her, they're like, I've never met such a well-rounded teenager. And they can just see, like, whatever she puts her mind to, she's so passionate about, which at the moment is racing. She wants to get into F1, either on a team. Well, our goal would be the first F1 female driver, because she's ambitious, but or a race team. So she's going to start mechanics. So yeah, I think when you take them out of school, particularly if they've been in the school system and you have that school mindset and you first take them out, it is so hard to get out that mindset. And when they're going through emotional and mental trauma as well, it's terrifying to even think about their education. And with my eldest, I haven't done much in the form of education, purely because she is so self-driven. And I know every child is different. My other two, it's different again, because they're different. But she is so self-driven. She's learning Italian, because Ferrari is our favorite team. Lithuanian, because her boyfriend is from Lithuania. So she's learning 2 different languages. I don't have to get her to study, because she just does it. I don't have to tell her to study. She just is naturally inclined, because she's so ambitious. And I think she will probably do better because she's at home than she would have had we kept her in school, because I dread to think what would have happened when she hit secondary school.
What about socializing? Have you found that she's been able to make friends within the home ed community? Has she still got friends from her old school? How have you found that dynamic with her? Because that must be quite difficult for her to navigate.
Yeah, she has friends from old school, but she doesn't see them anymore. But these days, kids chat online a lot, don't they? When they first initially left school, she had friends locally, which did go to school, so just around the estate. So she played with them a lot for a good couple of years. But then in the past couple of years, she's kind of moved on from them and developed new friendship groups from. So before her passion for racing, it was film. She wanted to be an actress, and so for a couple of years she explored that, and she went to a local film class. So she's met friends there, and a couple of them are local. So they're the main people she's with now. She goes to a local youth club every week, so she's got friends there. We haven't really done much in the home ed community. There's not that much here, and then when we have tried, it hasn't really been quite right, which is a shame. I'm going to have another look as my little boy is, he's just turned 5. So I would like to try more things for his age. So we're going to dip our toe back in the water there. But yeah, she's got plenty of friends locally that she keeps in touch with.
You mentioned about how important you felt it was to do this podcast so that parents listening who might be in the same position hear that you've been through it and you've come out the other side. What advice, apart from sort of being able to keep the lines of communication open and, to be empathetic and validating, what advice would you give them? Would you give a parent listening to this who's maybe torn about, should they carry it on? How long do they leave it? How much should they intervene? That kind of thing.
Now, this is a tricky one because I know it's not always that straightforward. I know there's a lot of everybody's in a different situation, so it can be tricky to just make the decision. But I think the longer you leave it, I'm just going to be honest and share. I think the longer you leave it, the more damage is done. And what children need from a parent is their presence, and just to know that we will be there no matter what, that we will show up and be there. And I think there is no better way of letting your child be seen and heard and letting them know that no matter what, you are there, than to say, this isn't working, this is causing you harm, and we're getting you out of there. And the best thing to do, because even when I'd made the decision to take them out, I didn't know what the heck I was going to do. I was still like, and now what?
Where's the manual? Where's the manual telling me what to do?
Nobody's told me how to do this. I'm stuck. But I literally leaped and the net appeared and I figured it out as I went. And I think I wished I'd had somebody tell me that when I first did it. You just get out. The main thing is getting your child mentally well, because it doesn't matter how many qualifications they've got if they struggle the rest of their lives with mental health and not knowing who they are. Because they can, let's be honest, they can go and do the GCSEs at 20, 30, 50. They can do anything at any time in their life. It doesn't all have to be done by the time they're 16. And this is where we need to get the school mindset out, and we have to do some, and I've read lots and lots of books on deschooling and all the different types of home education, and I highly recommend that because it's so good to kind of get our mindset right, because you will come up against people who, oh, but what about this and what about that? And so yeah, it's just take the leap and know that the information you need to know will come. It's just not all going to come right now, because you don't need it all right now. What you need is to get your child well. And yeah, that would be my advice. Get them out as soon as you possibly can. Find a way, make it work, and get them better.
It reminds me very much of some of that, because I know that you're a coach as well. And it reminds me of some of the times when I've coached women in abusive relationships. And it's very much the same. It's like, get everything together, get out, and all the bits will fall into place and you can sort it all out once you're safe. But realistically, the first step is get out of the abusive relationship, then everything can be put into place after that. And it sounds like for you, the priority was, let's get her out, let's get her safe back at home, and then everything can be started from there.
Yeah, absolutely. And and for the first 6 months, we, because I'd looked into home education, and the advice is to deschool, get yourselves into that place of, getting over the trauma and things like that. And we did that for 6 months, and I was amazed how much they learned in that 6 months when I wasn't teaching them a thing. It was unbelievable because we had the time. And that's when our creativity flourished. I mean, the drawing she was coming out with, I was like, where the heck have these been? And my dad's an artist, so it must have been in there, but she just didn't have the time or capacity to bring it out. And actually, she's starting. So this is one of the things like people think, oh, but the GCSEs. Um, she was only 10 at the time, so I wasn't thinking about GCSEs. And I wasn't entirely sure if I even wanted them to do GCSEs, but she is actually starting next month at GCSEs at the local college. They have a home ed group. And these are the kind of things you don't know because you you're not in that world. But once you take the leap, then suddenly you discover, oh, actually, and and if your local college doesn't do home ed classes, you can ask. I know someone in one of the home ed groups locally is asking another college that's close to us if they will start a GCSE home education group. So she's going to do a math, science, and English 1 day a week for the next 2 years at the local college. So even GCSEs are possible through home education and not having necessarily to do them yourself and pay for them. But again, this is the kind of stuff I didn't know when I leaped. I just chose her. And I think ultimately that's your choice. It's them or their education. And I chose her.
And of course, what you found then was by choosing her, you were also choosing her education because it wasn't one or the other. It felt like it was one or the other because you're in that system, and then as soon as you're out of it, you're like, oh, actually, I can have both. What a bonus.
And this is actually, for her, the home education has been so freeing, and she's been able to explore all the subjects that she loves to do. Like last year her and my other daughter were in a local film festival. So they were in a film collective. They've recorded short films, and one of them was put on a big screen at a local film festival. And my daughter actually made the prop. It was an alien movie. She made the prop, and she spent about 150 to 200 hours over the space of 6 months. I lost my dining room table for 6 months. I mean, every day going, oh my God, the mess. I thought this is her art. And she spent 6 months making this phenomenal clay alien head, which was in a short film, in a film festival. And I just don't think those things would have happened. She certainly wouldn't have had 150 to 200 hours to sit and build this masterpiece. So for her, and every child is absolutely different, and that is the beauty of home education, because you can tailor it to that child in front of you rather than it being one size fits all for every child in the class. And that's the beauty with her. We've really been able to hone in on her skills and her gifts and give her free rein to go and explore them. She's not tied to anything. She's going to start at GCSEs next month, and the college are going to allow her to do the mechanic course alongside it, so she can go in. She won't be studying it, but for the first year she will be doing the course. And then on the second year of her GCSEs, if she likes mechanics, so there you go, she gets to know before she actually signs up for the course if it's what she wants. She gets to test it for a year. Then in year 2, she can continue on the mechanics course and get a first diploma. So she'll leave college at 15 with a GCSEs and a diploma in mechanics, and then be able to start actual college in whatever subject she chooses if she decides to continue down that route. So it's just been amazing for her.
She's flourishing.
She absolutely is. And that's why I wanted to do this, because 4 years ago, I was crying myself to sleep every night thinking I'd lost her, thinking she's going to struggle for the rest of her life. And now I can sit here today, and there's plenty of people who've said it as well, have said, oh my God, I can't believe she's phenomenal, because she's just got so many natural skills that she's been able to do, like what do you call the SFX makeup. She loves to do all of that. And a couple of years ago now, she spent hours on end doing SFX makeup. And the guy who run the film class, he said she's already film ready. Like, she could go on a set and do art makeup for a film. He says she's that good. And she was like 13 at the time.
That's wonderful. Home educated teens are, I think, one of the most precious gifts in our community, because there is such a lot of them now, because there are so many that started home educating during coronavirus, and there's so many now teens in our community, and they're all so wonderful, and they've got such amazing interests and passions, and they're really switched on, and their skill set and their mental health and their attitude is fabulous. I think I really wish we could get them out more in front of people, because they are such a testimony to our community. I think home ed teens are.
I absolutely love my teen. People talk about teens and how miserable they are. They just sit in their rooms, and I absolutely adore being in her company. She's such good company, and I just feel better when she's around. And she's just completely authentic, because I've always just allowed them to express themselves and say how they're feeling. And we were at a big family event recently, and I met one of my cousin's new partners, and she just said, "I cannot believe how much your children talk. I love children that talk. Not that they don't shut up, but as in like how articulate they are." She says, "I love children that will just sit and talk, because, especially once they get to teens, they can be a bit grunty. They haven't got a lot to say, but, people worry about the social skills, but mine are so sociable because they're not sat in a classroom with 25 kids the same age all day, every day, because they're out and about, and because they'll talk to anyone, anywhere." So
exactly, they're meeting people of all different ages, and they're communicating with them, and so they're not stuck within this very rigid, there's 25 people all the same age and you can only talk at break time kind of system.
Yeah.
Well, I have got one last very important question to ask you, and that is, who is your daughter's favourite F1 driver then? I'm guessing one of the Ferrari guys.
No, even though Ferrari's our favourite team, Lewis Hamilton is our favourite driver.
But of course. Has to be, right? Has to be. What, in actual fact, my two quite like F1 as well. And I always say it is amazing to have a sport with such a great ambassador in it as Lewis Hamilton, who really raises awareness of so many important issues in society. And it's rare to have that in a sport, I think.
Yeah, she's off to Silverstone Festival this weekend for their dad, so they are both very excited for that. She's been counting down for a year. So she's really looking forward to that.
Well, it's so lovely to speak to you, Vicky, and to hear that journey from really despair to just this amazing, flourishing, wonderful girl that you've raised. So thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I'm sure it will be hugely reassuring and very inspirational for our listeners. Thank you so much, Vicky.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for joining us for today's Home Education Matters podcast. See you at the next one. Have a lovely day.